Hey, and welcome back to another episode of Love Restored. Hey, and welcome back to a new season of Love Restored. I am your host, Marshaun Olaniyan, and you are listening to KCCR Brownstone Cityscapes Radio. Thank you so much for being here. Listen, for the next 30 minutes, we are talking about red flags. Why you keep missing them and how to spot them sooner. Listen, so we keep talking about relationships. We keep talking about the relationship with yourself as well as the relationship with your partner. This series, the first part of this series that we are going to talk about. So these first 5 to 6 weeks, we are going to be talking about red flags, some from yourself, some how to spot with your partner. And then I'm also going to tell you about a resource that I created for you to spot them sooner, what red flags look like. Because if you're anything like me, listen, I was a part of the crew that didn't understand that red flags was a thing. I did not know the terminology red flag in the beginning of my dating life. And I struggled through recognizing and or being able to move away from them soon. So once I discovered that it was something in my gut telling me that something wasn't right, I didn't necessarily understand that thing, this feeling was connected to a red flag or something that my body was telling me wasn't right about the relationship, about the treatment, about the whatever was actually happening. And so I wanted to pass along these things to you. And so today I want to talk about, again, why you keep missing the red flags and how to spot them sooner. So one of the first things that comes to mind is the psychology behind ignoring red flags. Again, if you don't understand what a red flag is, then this may not seem like it's too important, for lack of a better term, but all of these things are important. So even if you don't know the terminology of a red flag, right? A red flag is literally just something that's telling you something is not going right in the relationship. Like I mentioned, sort of like you feel like you're being mistreated. You feeling like your goals and values, your core goals, your core values are not in alignment with the other person. They're doing something, they're saying something, their behavior, their habits are not in alignment with the way that you want your future relationship to continue to unfold. Then that is something that you should absolutely pay attention to. One of the things that I knew that I did not want to be a part of that literally slipped by me, which ended up being a red flag, which was I do not like or really lean into excessive drinking, drugs, of any sort, right? And I know a lot of people are on the fence about marijuana or whatever. That's just not my thing. So I don't want my partner to engage in those behaviors, as well as any type of cigarette, any type of anything that you have to put to your mouth. Let me say that, okay, right? Because now we have the what are they? The vapes and all that stuff. It's just not my thing. So back in the day, they didn't have vapes. They had cigarettes and weed, right? And so I end up sharing this with my partner, not realizing that these were things that he was already engaging in. And so because he liked me, because he wanted our relationship to go further, he hid these things from me. And once and it was years, okay? It was years that these things were hidden from me. And so once I saw what was happening after years of being in a relationship with the guy, he would I'm laughing about it now because I thought it was just like, this is masterful deceit. And so what he would do is he would keep a kit, a smoker's kit, if you will, inside of his vehicle. And so before we would get together, whether it was a date, hangout, whatever it was, and after a period of time, he would, like, he had a cologne, he had mouth rinse, he had those like little thin sheets or whatever that you put on your tongue. So he had a whole kit to mask the smell of cigarette smoke in particular. Now, the weed was something different, and that's a different story. But all this to say, once I saw these things, I didn't walk away. I was too deep into it, and again, I just didn't recognize what was going on. And so in order for you not to go down this road, I want to share these things with you. So again, so you can spot them sooner, so you can walk away, so the time, energy, and effort is not wasted. So you don't have to go down the road where you feel like, and or what ends up happening is a breakup or divorce occurs because the red flags were either ignored, or like myself, you didn't understand what was actually happening, that they were considered red flags, that these things don't just automatically change unless the person wants to change, etc. Right? So all of that is my background, which is why I'm here speaking specifically this first half of the season. We're going to talk about red flags, again, some with yourself, some with your partners, so you can understand not only is he bringing some red flags to the relationship, but you also bring some red flags to the relationship. And so for yourself to be able to counter you being a walking red flag, you can't do anything about your partner and or another person. You have no control over the things that they want to do or the things that they say that they're going to do and don't do. You don't have any control over that. The only person that you have control over is yourself. You have control of your habits, your behaviors, your speech, right? The things that you let bother you, the things that you don't. So you only have control of you. So now let's get back into this. The psychology behind ignoring the red flags. So one of the first things is that it could be like a survival mode or even an emotional attachment thing that's going on. And many women are conditioned, unfortunately, to prioritize connection over compatibility, which leads them to excuse the behaviors that should be deal breakers. So it could be a survival mode or emotional attachment that has you more leaning in toward this is our connection over the big picture, which is your long-term compatibility to this person. Right. And so going back to my story about the cigarette smoking and weed and excessive drinking and etc. After a period of time, I did notice that there did start to become a disconnection between me and my ex-husband, because once he revealed who he was, who he truly was, right? So he took off the mask. At some point, his smoker's kit didn't matter. He no longer took care of his breath when he came in my presence. He came in smelling like smoking, because that was a repellent for me from the very beginning. Once he fully disengaged with his mask, I was like, ooh, your breath stink. Ooh, I don't want to kiss you. And that was like a big touchy feely. I want to be on you, around you, kind of in your space, in your face. And once he stopped taking care and masking himself for me, I was turned off, and I no longer wanted to do and be in his presence like I once did before. So understanding that these things will happen if you ignore them, right? The ultimate still will happen, which could lead to a breakup or divorce, which most of the time it will. It may take longer. It may take you longer to say, you know what, enough is enough. But at some point, enough will be enough. And the continuation of the relationship, you will not feel like you are leaning into your partner any longer. You will actually be leaning away from or disconnected from. So survival mode or emotional attachment. Another thing is that there could just be hope and potential versus the reality. And so what that actually means and looks like is maybe yet your brain clings to the man's potential rather than his actual behaviors, the way that he's showing up, causing yourself to justify or even downplay some of the red flags that are occurring. So there's that hope that you're leaning into versus who he truly is, how he is truly showing up. And again, for me, it wasn't the hope or potential. It was what he was displaying to me. Like it was his representative that was on display. And then once the real person came out years later, that real person is who stayed around. So the deep connection that I felt with him was slowly slipping away because of our fundamental core values were not in alignment, right? So that compatibility, that long-term compatibility was not there for us. Okay, and then there could be the fear of being alone. A lot of people, not just women, a lot of people struggle with this, which is why we have a tendency to stay in situations and relationships that we shouldn't for longer periods of time, again, where we shouldn't even need to be. So some people, and in your case, women, subconsciously ignore the warning signs because they fear starting over or believe they won't find another man. and or another man won't find them, another man won't choose them, or how many more years will it be before I find another person that's going to want to lean into me, that's going to want to nurture me, protect me, claim me as his own. So there's that fear of being alone. So maybe I don't want to start over because I just don't want to start over, right? Or I put in so much time, energy, and effort with this particular person. I don't want to have to do that again. I know this person, even if I don't agree with their quirks, even if I understand what red flags he has that he's bringing to the table. I don't want to start over. I just really want him to get his stuff together. And although that is admirable, you're keeping yourself stuck in a box because, again, you only have control over you, over yourself. You don't have control over him. How long it's going to take him to, if ever, get his stuff together according to what you are believing his stuff needs to be together, right? So all of that is going to make a huge difference in the long term of your relationship and if it lasts. So if you're ignoring your red flags because of the fear of being alone, suck it up and be alone now instead of wasting any more years, any more time, any more energy, any more tears, right? Trying to fuss and fight and argue over him not leaning into and or giving you the things that you want. Then there is past trauma and familiarity. If chaos or inconsistency was normalized in your childhood, you may unconsciously seek this same dynamic in your romantic relationships, mistaking it for love. So, this is something that a lot of us actually do in different scenarios, whatever, because most of us have had similar but not the same experiences, right? So you may be able to understand and connect to what a person is bringing to the table and or has said to you, but it may not be the exact same every single step that you went through, that they went through, and vice versa. But that familiarity, that the toxicity that you were used to from your childhood, now you're taking this into your romantic relationship and accepting it as, well, this is how people that I know, that I'm used to, this is how they love me. This is how they shown love. This is how I am accustomed to what love looks like. Not really understanding that you are inadvertently kind of living somebody else's life instead of taking control and determining, this don't feel right to me. This, okay, I saw this growing up. That didn't feel right to me growing up. And so now I want to rewrite my future or write my future versus just going along with the program and the generational program that most of us are accustomed to. And I get it. Been there, done that. I've done that myself. At some point, we have to take responsibility and full ownership over our lives and how we are showing up and the things that we are accepting in our lives and the way that we are showing up. Right. And so if you want to write your own history, write your own future, right? Then you have to be willing to say, this is what I am willing to put up with. And these are the things that I'm not. These things over here are non negotiable. And stand on those things, even when there's no other choice for you to choose from as far as a potential mate. Even when that does mean you being alone for a longer period of time than you want to be alone, right? Even if this does mean that you have to really focus on the person that they are presenting right now, their reality, because maybe there have been some things that have shown up and you're like, nah, this is sweeping them under the rug, so you don't have to deal with them, and or going back to one of the other things that I mentioned previously. So this is the psychology behind ignoring the red flags. Now let's move into some common blind spots that keep specifically women stuck. You might have minimized early warning signs. Now, what does that mean? It could be like small issues like inconsistent communication, the lack of the follow through, right? And you're dismissing these instead of recognizing them as patterns. Like I had a client who literally just broke up with her boyfriend think they were together for almost 2 years at this point. And a lot of their relationship was really great. Didn't have many breakdowns, if you will. Not a lot of toxicity was being shown. They had a lot of things to talk about. And it seemed like things were, I'm not going to say perfect, right? But definitely they had some areas to grow in, but they also would seem like they were ahead of the curve when it came to most people in their relationships. Well, long story short, one of the things that her partner was not working on was himself, right? And it was specifically how he handles his emotions when he gets upset. And so she recognized the pattern with him and she chose herself. And what was the pattern? The pattern was everything was smooth and going fine when she didn't tell him essentially no. And as soon as he didn't get his way, he turned into a 2-year-old throwing a temper tantrum. And the first time it happened, she was utterly shocked, and because he actually ended the relationship, right? I was like, okay, well, what is this all about, right? And then they got back together and everything seemed to be swimmingly fine. And then he essentially did the exact same thing when he didn't get his way later on in their relationship. And then he was bringing up other things that she had no idea that was an issue. And so, long story short, she was just like, you know what? There are some things that he has to work on, specifically when it comes to him being able to regulate his emotions, specifically when he doesn't get his way. And when he doesn't get his way, this person shows up, which is the other side of him, right? And each of us have this. Some of us are able to manage it better than others. And so in his case, he had not mastered this particular thing. And they had talked about going to coaching or therapy before, and he just was like he wasn't ready to face said things that needed to be worked on. And unfortunately for them, specifically him, missing out on a really great relationship because they were really compatible on a lot of areas. Some areas, again, they needed to work on and whatever, and she thought that they were starting to work through them. But this one particular thing where he couldn't regulate his emotions whenever he didn't get his way was literally the deal breaker for her. And she noticed that it was a pattern. Getting back to this, she didn't want to minimize this warning sign for her and then get deeper into the relationship or maybe even marry, and then now she's dealing with a 2-year-old every time he doesn't get his way. She didn't want to deal with that. He wasn't ready to face that. And so she was like, okay, understood, thank you, it has been a great ride, but I can't do this. And unfortunately the relationship ended. So don't minimize the early warning signs. There was other things that was going on, but this is not about her relationship. We're not going down the rabbit hole in that way. So another thing is believing that love can change him. Love can change a person. This is the idea that patience, understanding, and or nurturing your partner will fix unhealthy behaviors. And this takes me back to what I said before. None of us can change another person. The other person, including but not limited to yourself, has to be willing to do your own work. The internal work. This is the work that people run away from. The asking yourself the deeper questions of why. So in his case, maybe he needs to ask himself, why do I get so upset when I don't get my way? And really getting down to the root of why, and pretty much keep asking himself why. And again, most people don't really understand how or why to do this. So that's where the outside comes into play. That's where the coaching comes into play. A mentor comes into play. Therapy comes into play, so you can get to the deeper understanding of why you are showing up and doing the things, and or why things are affecting you at such a visceral level. What is actually happening in his case? And so these are questions that you have to also ask yourself. Why are you minimizing his inconsistent behaviors? Why are you allowing him to mistreat you in a way? Why are you allowing the lack of follow through to be okay for you? You cannot fix somebody that's not ready to do the work. They have to be ready. you also have to be ready to do your own work to fix your own unhealthy habits and unhealthy behaviors and unhealthy ways that you may be showing up in the relationship yourself. So you have to understand that just believing that love is going to change him or anyone, it will not. You're setting yourself up for failure. This is a red flag. And again, this may be a red flag with him, but this also may be a red flag with you, believing that you can change someone. It doesn't work that way. Okay. So another thing is ignoring how you feel in his presence. Your body does not lie. Your body and your emotions give you signals. Do you feel anxious? Do you feel unsure? Do you feel like you have to consistently question yourself in his presence? Do you feel like he's more entangled with his devices or other people when you're in his presence? And I'm not talking about like at a big family function or some type of a function where you're mingling with other people. I mean, just on a day-to-day basis, when you are in his presence, what does your body feel? Do you feel like you feel much freer when he's not around you? And as soon as he comes in the room, the energy in the room and the environment changes. You feel like you need to tense up. You can't be free about your speech and the things that you want to share with him. So don't ignore what your body is trying to tell you. I always talk about the gut feeling, but it was really that God-given intuition. And when we run away from and or ignore our God-given intuition, bad things absolutely happen. We go down and go through things that we more than likely didn't have to go through if we would have just paid a little bit more attention to what's happening in the moment. So that's asking yourself that deeper question. Why do I get so tensed up when he comes around? Why don't I feel like I want to share more of what's happening with me in my life, the big things that are now occurring? Why don't I want to share that with him any longer? And now I'm gonna actually go back to that relationship because it's one of the things that her and I spoke about. One of the things that she also leaned into recognizing, which was she got a really big promotion on her job in her career specifically, and she didn't want to share that with him. That's a big thing that's going on with your body is telling you something ain't right. The connection that you thought was there, something is out of alignment. And so again, you want to really pay attention to what your body is saying to you, asking yourself, how do I feel in his presence? Do I feel like I can just be me? Do I feel like I have to be completely made up every time he's around? Or can I literally and figuratively let down my hair? Can I take off my wig if I wear wigs? Can I take off my lashes if I wear lashes? Can I take off my full face and still feel just as beautiful in his presence? Or do I always have to be on as if I am going outside where the world is now getting exposed to me? Or do I have to feel like that in his presence, whether it's in my home or in his home? Or can I just turn that off and just be, where we can just laugh, where we can just talk, where I can just be free, where I can feel like I can be in my soft, feminine, asking for help, and or him just needing, leaning into me because he wants to help me? Or do I feel like I have to keep asking over and over again, can you help me? Can you? Is he naturally in tune with who you are? Don't ignore how you feel in his presence. Your body is telling you something that maybe your eyes can't see. How do you feel? How do you feel? And then your blind spots can also be that you're listening to just what he's saying, the words that are coming out of his mouth, instead of matching them up with his actions. A man who says all the right things but doesn't follow through is showing the hugest red flag through his inaction. Through his inaction. You have to pay attention to not only his words, but also if his actions are matching up. If there's a disconnection there, that is absolutely a red flag. I'm not saying that he has to have everything already completed and done, but it should be where He says something, he does that very thing. He says the next thing, he does that very thing. All right. So paying attention to how you're feeling. So those are some common blind spots that we as women miss and or get stuck in because we're like, well, no, maybe it's just me. Maybe I'm the one. Maybe I'm demanding too much. Maybe I'm and standards are not demanding too much. They're not because your man, the one that is supposed to be there for you, with you, doing life with you, will not feel that your standards are too much for him. He's going to actually encourage you to have standards and to lean into them even more. Which brings me to the third section. How can you train yourself to notice these warning signs that much sooner? All right. One of the first things that you can do is I've actually talked about this, but I really want to point it out here, which is to trust your gut instincts. How do you feel, right? And so if something feels off, pause and assess instead of brushing it aside or sweeping it under the proverbial rug. What's going on? What's going on? Trust your gut, trust your instincts, because if you're not feeling right, something is off is because something is off. Pay attention to that. Pay attention to that. Another way to notice these warning signs earlier is for you to sit down, take some time to create your non-negotiable list. What does that mean? It means that you want to define what your deal breakers are, ideally before you start dating. So when you do go out there on a date, you can immediately recognize when one of these are crossed. Your non-negotiable list. That's another way that you can lean into noticing these warning signs sooner. Another thing is look for some patterns and stop making excuses for him, right? One time, some things happen, mistakes can happen. But if it's repeated behaviors, repeated ways that they're talking to you, repeated ways you keep asking them, hey, we talked about X, Y, and Z, what's the result or what happened? How are you attaining, say it, X, Y, and Z? And there is, no follow through, right? It was just all lip service, no action behind it. Don't make excuses. Don't say that he had a hard day. So did you, right? Don't say he got a lot going on. So do you, right? So understanding that all of the excuses that you can give to him, you own them yourself, but you're showing up differently, right? And so if you can show up differently, having life going on, shouldn't you want somebody else to be able to show up just as different? Because life's for all of us, not just for one party. I understand about timing. Maybe your timing is off for asking that. So maybe there is some things that you are doing for the timing of it all, but overall, not just make excuses for him overall all the time, where you always have to tell your family and friends, well, he's not coming because, or he said that because. Don't make excuses. Pay attention. That way you can minimize your feelings being hurt, or you continuously getting emotionally deeper into the relationship, not realizing that he's not going as deep as you are. You're doing all of that by yourself. Okay. Another thing is to pay attention to your emotional responses. I kind of said that, but I want to make it very, very plain. If you feel drained, right? How do you feel in this presence, right? If you feel drained, if you feel anxious, or even more confused, then you feel secure, then you feel happy, something is probably off in your relationship. And or if you're not in a relationship, the person that you're dating. So paying attention to the signs. And then understanding, the very last one is to maybe even get a second opinion. Get a second opinion from somebody who is not emotionally attached to the situation, specifically from an outsider. So, of course, you can go to your friend, you can talk to a coach, right? You can talk to your therapist, a mentor, just somebody that you can trust that's outside, not emotionally attached to the situation as you are, to help you spot these blind spots that you have that much sooner. So I said earlier, I had a resource for you. And so I created this resource specifically to spot your red flags. It is a red flag detector toolkit, specifically for all of the things that I've been talking about, but it's taking you deeper into seeing what these red flags are, spotting them sooner, being able to detect them, and it's giving you a whole bunch of ways to do that, including but not limited to journal prompts, so you can get some of these things out of your system. And so if that sounds like something that you want to take a part of, that would actually help you during your dating life in these dating stages, then I highly recommend that you click the link and purchase your copy today, because it is so very important for you to understand what's actually happening with yourself and to be able to have a resource so you can have these things. So I really appreciate you. Again, this is Marshaun Olaniyan. Thank you for being here for this past 30 minutes, connecting with me. You are listening to KCCR Brownstone Cityscapes Radio, and this is Love Restored. I love you guys, and we will jump into the next topic next time around. I'll see you then. Okay, bye-bye.